loving the intro in the beginning.
We just uploaded that like a few seconds ago, so I'm glad that it worked here.
I love it though. Hello, we are meeting at a different time today.
Not a weekend, but I'm so excited to be here. Yes. We are going to be interviewing our first guest on Comic Besties.
Yes, our first creator interview, which we are really, really excited.
Just to show you how excited we are, by the way.
Yeah.
This is this is Candace and I with Candace, do you want to do the introduction?
Yes. Yeah, so like I was saying, we're just super excited because this creator we are clearly, fans of his work. And, we both love his work that he's done on Sabrina and Katie Keene. So we are really excited to talk about some of his projects that he's currently working on and a Kickstarter. So with that being said, we are going to bring on Andrew Pepoy.
Hey there.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. We're really excited to have you on today. Especially, to have you as our first guest, of course, and just like get to know you better, have our audience know you, ask some questions, talk about your Kickstarter that's new and all the things. So we want to kind of give everybody a little idea about just a little bit about you before we start diving in. So first of all, if you guys are not familiar with Andrew, first of all, he's also Chicago local like we are. Yes. So a lot of Chicago representation today. So he's actually been in the comic industry for over 30 years, just wow. He's done so many different things across like all different publishers and different series. So like a lot of the things that he's best known for is Fables, doing inks on that, The Simpsons, X-Men Haley,
which I love.
And he's done a lot of like cover art, which is what I'm most familiar with, especially like that Sabrina cover that we were showing. He's done like work for Archie, Doctor Who, Red Sonja, and so many more that we're gonna definitely talk about. But most importantly, we are going to talk about his Kickstarter, which is actually, he is a creator, writer, and artist for all the things, all the titles, for the adventures of Simone and Ajax, which I've started reading and it's very good. And we're really excited to share it with everyone. So that's just a little bit about him.
Yeah.
Before we jump into the Kickstarter, though, I just want to say hi to the chat.
Yes.
Black Comic.
Hi.
Amon.
Oh, hey.
And we got Lauren here.
Hey, Lauren. She's one of mine.
I love
perfect.
it. Thank you for joining. All right, so we're excited to chat more about your Kickstarter. Can you tell us just kind of how you came up with that concept for Simone and Ajax?
Well, I mean, they go back all the way to when I was in college, back in the late 80s. And so like Ajax sort of appeared there's a painting that you can actually see in the back of that I put in the back of this book, Lemmings and Tigers and Bears, that came out last year. And so basically it was an assignment in one of my painting classes where we were told to use all these photographic elements and then paint them in watercolor, but it just seemed to be missing something. I was not good at following instructions on a lot of my assignments. And so, I was not supposed to do this, but I just decided it needed something. So I put this tiny little green dinosaur sort of peering around the corner in the thing. And it just sort of made the painting. And it supported it. And so I was like trying to come up with a name for this little dinosaur, and, being confused, I was thinking of the character Atlas, the mythological character Atlas, who supports the world. But for some reason in my head, I was thinking, it's like Ajax was the name that was coming to mind. So I was mistaken. And so I titled the painting, Ajax Triumphant, but unaware, way too, because he just doesn't know that he's just sort of making the painting. But anyway, and the name Ajax just sort of stuck. Even when I later figured out I got it wrong, I just sort of left it as Ajax. And, and Simone evolved out of a really boring class a statistics class that I absolutely hated, and there was this really cute
I
girl who
remember
sat
that.
next to me. So I started doodling, a cute girl because of a cute girl sitting next to me, and that evolved sort of into Simone, and then somehow I just decided to team them up for a little story, chatting about life, and it just sort of went from there. They just sort of, a lot of times writers say characters take on a life of their own. You don't really plan what they're going to do in some ways. They just sort of go where they're going to go. And so, I just finally started doing some short stories with them in comics in the mid '90s, and did a bunch of those. And that's actually what's part of the Kickstarter. But these characters have been around on and off for the last 30 some years. And last year, like I said, I did an all new original book, that one that you've got up on the screen there, Lemmings and Tigers and Bears, Oh My. I decided to do my very first Kickstarter because, well, it was the pandemic. And all the work I was supposed to be doing all disappeared on me. So it was like, okay,
right.
now's the time to try, bring these guys back and do my own. So I thought I'd start with volume 3. It may seem a little weird, but I'm going to start with volume 3 and put out an all original book. But now I'm going back and doing volume 1, titled.
So almost like a reboot.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to like have everyone see what are they up to now, get it.
Yeah.
And that book was in, last year's book was in full color. There we go. Trying to find where the camera is, but this book goes back to their early black and white days, their black and white 90s indie comic days, and collects all the stories I did with them from that very first story that I did in college. As awful as it looks, all the way through their very last black and white story I did in 2004.
Wow.
Which is that outer space story you just had a panel of there a second ago. And I'm going to collect all that. Plus, I'm going to collect a lot of Christmas cards and other illustrations I did for different things with them, because I was using this technique called craft hint that doesn't exist anymore. It's a archaic kind of thing that's you don't really need anymore because of Photoshop.
Okay.
And because it needs sort of these days it needs special printing, I'm going to do anything I ever did with them on craft hint in this book, because it just won't show. It just probably won't print well in a color book. And so I'm going to include all these. I used to do entire mini comics for some of my holiday cards once in a while.
Oh, I love
that. And I even had forgotten one entirely when I was sort of digging through the boxes trying to find, everything that I'm, everything for this book. I knew I had done 5 of these mini comics. I'd completely forgotten about one of them. There's a 6th, so they're going to be included as bonus extras and a lot of extra art. Art from the proposed newspaper strip. I was going to try to do them as a newspaper strip at one point.
That's really interesting. I love the idea of seeing these two characters in all of these different iterations of like these Christmas cards and these like newsletter strips. How did it feel to kind of compile all of this? As you said, like there's some that you'd forgotten that you've created, but to really see that work coming from, your college days to through the pandemic, to really see that history of these two characters for yourself. What did that feel like going through and collecting all of it?
Well, I mean, on the plus side, I can look at it and say, well, I got better, because I'm going, I'm going to leave the early stories pretty much as they are.
Yeah.
I don't want to change them. I want people to read them as pretty much just as they appeared. I'm going to fix some typos and things like that, but other than that, I'm going to leave as is. And so it was, it is interesting to see the evolution of Ajax, who if you go back to that very first strip, or how Simone had a completely different hairstyle, a very very late 80s sort of gothish hairstyle,
I love it.
in the early appearances, and she didn't even have now she's always got the sunglasses, and she didn't even have the sunglasses, so people get to see how the two characters evolved, and it's just interesting to go through. And like I said, I forgot about stuff. I mean, I found a copy of what apparently is their very first appearance in print, which would have been my 1989 Christmas card.
Wow.
But unfortunately, I don't have anything good. I can't print from it. I can't find the original. So that's going to be like one of the few things that's not going to be in the book. But it's like but I'm trying to put everything I can in the book. That's still usable. I mean, sort of one of the problem with the craft stuff that I'll mention is that it deteriorated over the years.
Wow.
So I'm having to do a bunch of cleanup from high quality copies that I made because I can't work from the originals anymore.
Wow. That makes this so special, though, that you get so much kind of like of your history of these characters like in this Kickstarter book.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm you know, you get to, you know, it's in some ways it's an evolution of just watching me as an artist. You know,
Exactly.
not just them, but me, you know, hopefully get a little better between 1989 and, you know, 2004, 15 years later, you know.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with a lot of that. I don't know if I ever told you, Andrew, but actually I'm in graphic design. So it's even in the years, like definitely not as many years as experience as you have, but like I've just been able to see like my growth within that, and it's really cool. Like when you look back and then seeing just how much you've grown, how much your characters have changed, and everything like that. So I'm sure it's just been like a really fun like nostalgia trip for you, and it's really cool that we get to basically go like along with you on that. I was reading through both volumes, and I could see some of those like changes and differences, and it's cool just seeing like of course the 90s were such a great time, and just so it's like really cool to kind of see like, you know, it kind of puts you in a little like time capsule, and you're able to go in time with these characters and then enjoy the new ones that are from these new stories. So yeah, I love it.
like you know, Simone's wearing, you know, the oversized T-shirt and the sort of jean shorts and stuff of the 90s in some of these stories, you know, while you know, these days, you know, I'm trying, you know, she wouldn't be wearing that same outfit, you know. So.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one thing when I any Archie comics I've read is that like they're someone that they've been to, what is it, the 40s, 50s, like, and they've been around for so long that you've been seeing like they have a moment each decade, and you can see the differences, how they were drawn, the kind of the fashion. I mean, that's one thing me and Haley have been enjoying about Katie Keene as well, is we've been reading some of the original comics, but then also the ones that you've worked on, and also the series from the 80s, and kind of just seeing all the differences. Yes, here you go. Which yes, we love this version of Katie, which might as well ask while it's here, but I actually noticed that that story of Katie Keene, that she went to school in Chicago. Now, from when me and Haley are pretty new to reading Katie Keene, so I know that she usually lives in New York, but I wasn't sure if that was something that you got to bring a little piece of yourself being from Chicago, or if that was something that was kind of always you know, about her story that maybe we just weren't familiar with. But that was really cool seeing those like landmarks and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that was me adding that little bit
love
in.
that.
I mean, I you know, she's from a small town in Michigan, and then she goes to Chicago. Well, guess who grew up in a small town in Michigan and then later moved to Chicago, you know, for college? Me. So so I brought that in there because I wanted to give sort of a backstory of how, you know, of where Katie Keene came from. People seem to like that kind of thing. And in the old series, it just was sort of like Katie's a star, you know, and she does these things, and it never really gave any background to her. And so I wanted to add a little, I don't know, soap opera is not the right word, but just you know, a little backstory, a little, you know, I mean, I don't want to give away what that backstory is, but why she decided in some ways to pursue that career in modeling that while yes is a bright and successful thing, you know, has sort of some not so cheery reasons sometimes behind it, you know, and you know, sort of make her more three-dimensional than perhaps she was before.
Yeah, I was gonna say it definitely gave her character a lot of depth. Because sometimes some of the Archie characters in general can just be, you know, it's just a fun read and things like that, and they don't go always into, you know, really into character development. So it was really I enjoyed starting to learn more about her in that way, and it looks like also you're able to like put a piece of your story with hers as well, which is really cool. I did have one other question too about the panel on the right. So as far back as me and Haley have seen from the original Katie Keene comics, we've noticed that fans have actually sent in designs of her fashion. So I guess I kind of was curious about what the process was like for that. Like, if, like, you know, did you were you given a photo? Was it something, were people, did they draw like, like the designs? I was kind of curious, like what that actually was like.
Yeah, well, yes, that is part of the history of Katie Keene, and I wanted to keep that. And there was first I'll say there was a lot about the history of Katie Keene I wanted to, and sort of knew I needed to keep to the strip, because Katie Keene was my mom's favorite character when she was growing up.
Oh, I love that.
And one of my aunt's favorites as well. And so I knew that if I didn't get this right, I was going to hear about this. If I didn't keep the spirit of what made Katie Keene, the special comic it was, I was going to hear about it. Like when my mom and my aunt were kids, one of them would subscribe to as like a Christmas present. One of them would subscribe to Katie Keene for a year, and the other one would subscribe to Little Lulu for a year for the other one. And so they both had their Katie Keene and Little Lulu comics, throughout the year. So I knew I had to keep some of that kind of thing, and I wanted to. This fashion idea was good. So we put the call out saying, hey, send us your ideas. And no, really, Archie at the time told me they hadn't seen mail like that in years. There's tons of mail. They would send me these stacks.
That's so amazing.
Stacks of mail from kids. Sometimes it'd just be really just, you could tell this kid is just barely able to handle a crayon, and some little kid, but I would try to make something out of it. And yes, if I needed a certain outfit that I didn't have a sketch from a kid for, yes, I would grab it out of a fashion magazine, and have to like make up a fake name, sometimes my mom's name or my aunt's name. Of course, I had to throw those in.
Sweet.
I love that.
How did it feel to engage with just like fan mail like that? Is that something that you've experienced with any of your other works, or did that feel like a really new experience working on Katie Keene and kind of injecting that history into your comic with her and seeing that response? Did it feel surprising?
It was really it was just exciting to see all these kids so excited about it. A lot of kids, so much mail. They were always like I said, about every month I get that stack like this, of like 50 or 60 letters or something the kids had sent in with ideas, and I would, like I said, I would try to use as many as possible, and use those names. But we even had some sort of famous by association kind of fans, like say for example, in 2009 or 10, I met Neil Gaiman, and Neil took me over to meet his daughter, who was a Katie Keene fan, who was a fan of my Katie Keene stuff. And so that was really cool. That happened. And I asked her to send me an outfit. She never did, but I asked her, can you send me an outfit for Katie? But yeah, and so it was just, so like I said, all these kids, discovering it, it was just kind of, it was just fun. It was exciting. Unfortunately, it wrapped up sooner than we thought. They unfortunately pulled the plug on it, and then discovered sales were going up. and so I came back and did the special Katie Keene, excuse me a second, origin story that appeared just in the trade paperback.
Okay.
Just in the paperback collection. So I came back to do that, but unfortunately I had other projects that had come up, so I was busy with other things and I couldn't do it as a series again. Although we did attempt to come back around 2010 or 11, I think we almost brought it back. There's actually a nearly complete Katie Keene miniseries that's sitting there unpublished at Archie.
I want it.
We both need this.
Well, just write to Archie and tell him you want to see it. The first,
Candace and I will be like the number one people in their inbox about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was they tried to do a mini series in between those times with some other creators, and then when I came back, they were like, can you incorporate this? So I found a way to write a new first issue, and then incorporate that miniseries, doing some rewrites and some redraws and make that work. And then I was going to, wrap it all up with with a 6th issue completely by me. And unfortunately, didn't it's still sitting there. So I would love to see that happen. I would love to do more Katie Keene. It was just fun to do.
Yeah, she's such a fun character.
Yeah, Loved doing all that, her hair all the time. She'd try to give her these fancy hairstyles and just, the detail. I mean, the fans love the detail, and I love doing that detail when I can.
It's so good. So what is it like to, obviously you've worked on, Fables and the X-Men, but something I'm curious about that you had kind of spoken about with Katie, and I think kind of ties into your work with Simone and Ajax, is like these characters kind of have like a long tail history and legacy, that they're not just, in this one kind of moment character. With your Kickstarter, you're collecting so much of your own history, and then with Katie, you're injecting this new and old history into it. How does it feel like working on the characters who are, I think outside of Marvel and DC, that have such a legacy with comic book readers?
I mean, it's nice to be a part of history in some ways. Your name gets put up there alongside a bunch of other great creators. Like another legacy character I got to do was Little Orphan Annie.
I did see that. That's really cool. So that was kind of like a rebooted. When was that? How long ago did you do that?
That was 2000. I did that in 2000 and 2001.
That's really cool, because I've noticed, like, especially with Simone and Ajax, like, it definitely gives me a lot of the, like, classic comic strip vibes of everything. So I feel like I don't know if that would have been like an influence, like, of that kind of style. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Also, I was peeking on your bio also that one of your influence was like Charles Schultz, of course. Everyone that doesn't know, like, the Peanuts, the Peanuts guy. Which of course I think that was besides Archie being my intro to comics, I think Charlie Brown was as well. So I can see that definitely being an influence, and it's really cool to kind of besides the doing your own spin on it, but also like for other stories of characters that are more established, it's cool that you get to be part of that history, like Haley was saying, but with your own spin. That's just really, really cool. And your art definitely can, I reckon your style is very distinctive. Especially, I've read a lot of Archie in my days, so I always recognize your style, and it just has a different kind of detailed quality than even some of the classic Archie. So really cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like adding that little, like the touch of fashion from Katie Keene and the detail and all that sort of, that's something that I like doing, and you'll see that in my other kind of projects too, like the outfits I put Simone in, or what I would do when I was drawing different Archie covers and things. I mean, you like you saw that cover for number 6 that you were holding and stuff. Yep.
So good.
Yeah, and you can see the detail I put in on like the corset and all that kind of thing. Yeah, and it's just it's just a fun little touch that adds something to it. But yeah, no, but definitely the classic comic strips were a huge influence. I mean, that's something that I was very lucky as a kid. So there weren't a whole lot of books on comics and comics history in the late 70s when I was first really getting into comics. I was 10 years old, and going into my public library in my little small town in Michigan. I'm from Holland. I grew up in Holland, Michigan, if you know where that is. And and for a small town library, they had a pretty good collection of what existed as far as books on comics history. So we had collections of Prince Valiant and Terry and the Pirates and all these things, and the Smithsonian collection of newspaper comics that introduced me to Floyd Gottfridson's Mickey Mouse and Wash Tubs and Captain Easy and all these other great strips. And the librarians noticed this 10-year-old kid checking out every one of these books, and they said to me one day, "Would you like to meet a real cartoonist?" Well, it turns out that Rick Yeager, who had drawn the Buck Rogers newspaper strip from 1933 to 1958, lived a couple small towns over from me, and came into the library fairly regularly. So they arranged for little 10-year-old me to meet him.
Oh my God,
that's so sweet.
Yeah, and I got to so I was really lucky to actually get to talk to a real cartoonist. At such a young age, because like usually it's like, oh, how does this work? How do you 10-year-old doesn't even have an idea how you make comics. And I'm sitting here talking with like a real cartoonist who had been doing it since the 1930s.
Wow.
And what I mostly got from him, though, in many ways, was his work ethic of just get the thing done, get the comics done. You can't just you have to meet those deadlines. And then I was lucky enough 2 years later, when I was 12, to take a summer art class from Mike Gustovich, another comic book artist in Grand Rapids, and learn how to start working with a brush when I was 12.
Wow,
So
that's
yeah,
such an amazing experience to have started so young and to have been amongst people who were in the industry already and were
Mhm.
what really also well known in the industry. Did your parents always kind of support that journey? It sounds like your mom and your aunt like had loved Katie Keenan, Little Lulu in the comics. So it also sounds like your family was invested in this kind of medium as well in some capacity.
oh yeah, no, my I have a very small but very supportive family. I mean,
Mm.
I have one aunt, one uncle, just very small family, with mom and dad and one sister. So, but everyone's always been very supportive. My parents were and still are. My parents are still with us in their 80s, and still very very supportive of me and all this with the comics. And growing up, they all loved and read comics. They may not have been into comics, when weren't still into comics when I was a kid, but they had grown up loving them, so they were supportive
Mm.
of me reading them. And, like I said, Katie King was my mom's favorite. Little Lulu was my aunt's favorite. The Heap, which was sort of the first swamp monster type character. You've heard of Swamp Thing and Man Thing and all that
Mhm.
sort of stuff. The original swamp monster character was the Heap, which was a character in Airboy. The Heap was my dad's favorite. And like sometimes I'd be reading these books on comics history that I got out of the library, and my dad would be peering over my shoulder. And it's like, oh, I used to have that one.
Oh, that's so fun.
And so yeah, so no, they've always been supportive, and so I've been very very lucky that way, that they would drive me to that other small town to go see Rick Yeager,
Mm.
so I'd actually get to meet up with him, and he would take my phone calls. I could call him up and be a pesky 11-year-old kid to call him up and ask him questions, and
Did
same. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna just did working in comics then kind of feel like the thing that you were always meant to be doing since you started at such a young age, learning about it, being able to kind of dive in creatively with people who were familiar with the industry.
Yeah, I mean, from fourth grade on, there was just nothing else I could ever imagine really doing. I mean, I certainly guess I had my fallback plans of this or that, but I was but that's all I really ever wanted to do from the time I was in fourth grade, that was about when I really got into comics. And Superman the movie had just come out, and I got really into the comics at that point, and I just couldn't imagine doing anything else, and I always pushed to make that happen, and just wasn't going to give up. I mean, I started publishing fanzines when I was 12 years old.
Oh my gosh.
My dad would sneak me to his office building on a weekend or a night, and we'd run them off on the office copier and stuff. And get the neighbors to subscribe, or like actually like 2 weeks from now is the 40th anniversary of my first Chicago Comic Con.
Wow.
When I came down the summer of 1983, I was 14 years old, and that was back in the days when your parents would let your 14-year-old kid hop in a car with his two 16-year-old friends and
Oh my
drive
gosh.
3 hours to Chicago,
Yeah.
and
Oh wow.
stay at the Americana Congress Hotel, as it was called back then, downtown on Michigan Avenue, and that's
Okay.
where the Chicago Comic Con used to be.
Wow, I can't even imagine.
Was it what convention was it?
It was the Chicago Comic Con.
It was
The
just like
C2E2?
C2E.
No, the Chicago Comic Con, which used to be the big show, bigger than
Oh
San
wow.
Diego. That used to be the show that everyone went to throughout the 70s and most of the
Wow.
80s. That was like the big show in the country. It wasn't until the 90s that San Diego sort of surpassed Chicago, and then Wizard bought it,
That's so
and stuff like that.
interesting.
wow.
Wow,
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
No. Chicago was the comics center of America in many
Oh,
ways.
that's
I mean, the
wild.
comics were produced in New York or California or wherever, but but sort of as far as fandom and all that sort of stuff went, it was Chicago. That's where everyone came.
Wow.
And so I was very lucky. I showed up there at that convention. I brought my own little folding table and a box of my fanzines, and I went in there, and I asked, can I set up my little table here? And Larry Charette, who had owned Larry's Comics up on Devon way back when, he was like, well, if you can find a spot that you're not blocking a fire exit or someone else's exhibit, I'll go for it, and I found one spot that fit that, and that's how I met Bill Willingham, because he was sitting on one side of me, and I had Mike Sains, who had done the first computer generated comics, sitting on the other side of me, and I was just sitting there with my little, my fanzines on my little. It was a little bigger than a TV tray kind of table.
That is amazing. Also, I can't imagine that happening at like C2E2 now.
Oh no, that's not going to happen. No, that doesn't. That kind of thing doesn't happen.
Times have changed.
Yeah, things have changed a lot. But yeah, and I remember there was another like a professional artist, Rich Buckler, who had, he walked up to me and he's like, "How did you get a table? I couldn't even get a table." And I was like, "I brought my own."
You're just like, screw the rules, like.
Like I said, I wasn't very good at obeying the rules in my college classes either. But yeah, no, you just sort of had, so yeah, I mean, there was, like I said, I was going to make this happen. And I was, I was standing in professional portfolio lines from the time I was 14 years old at that show. I started standing the pro lines. And in many ways, that's how I managed to break in eventually, because sometimes it's just the people I met standing in those lines who were later becoming professionals, or, some of the editors who I made connections with when I was like, 15 or 16 years old, who I later was able to work with, at DC Comics or something like that, So, I was out there, and I was just determined to make it happen. And I managed it. I was already, I was lucky. I got my first professional work the summer between my sophomore and junior year of college. I went to Loyola here in Chicago.
Okay.
So did I.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she did.
That's why you're up in Rogers Park, right?
Yep.
That's why I ended up there for 18 years or something. But and then I got my first inking job summer between my junior and senior year, inking for Malibu, and again, working with one of the guys I used to know from doing my fanzines back in the 80s. And I was able to go to New York, and on my first try on my spring break, get work out of both DC and Marvel, and there I was.
Wow.
By the time I graduated from college, I was like with DC, I was literally standing in the right place at the right time. I had, with the help of Michael Davis, I don't know if you know who Michael Davis is. He's a creator. He's one of the founders of Milestone Comics. Okay. He had arranged for me to meet. Okay, so like with Marvel, I was able to just make phone calls and just like say, "Hey, can I show you my stuff?" And I would drop, a name or two of people I knew. Like I would say, "Oh, Paul Curtis or Bill Reinhold, said I should call you," and they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you can come on up." So Marvel, I had no problem making appointments. DC couldn't manage it. So Michael Davis, who I'd met by chance in the airport, leaving my very first San Diego the summer before, he arranged for me to meet up with someone at an editor at DC, and got there. I'd never been to New York before in my life, and the receptionist called back, and they said, "Yes, send him back." Between the time I left reception and got to her office, an emergency family phone call had come in. She left her office. She was like, "No, I'm sorry, I have to leave. Can't see you." And I'm just sort of left standing there in the hallway at DC Comics, going, "What do I do now?" and the editor in the office next door, Brian Augustin, who was also a Chicago guy, came out of his office, saw this confused kid standing there, asked me what I was doing, and I told him. So he took pity on me, looked at my portfolio, and he ended up giving me the Flash Annual to do.
Oh my god,
that's so wild!
And I do think the Chicago connection helped.
Oh, absolutely! It's like
it.
and it's so crazy. Like you went in, with one plan, but then it ended up happening a totally different way. That's just wild. Yeah, timing really is everything.
Yeah, and later that editor came back that afternoon, and I did meet with her, and she offered me a monthly book.
Wow!
But I was still in college, and I still
like,
had college.
I got a monthly book and I got a Flash Annual. Like,
well, I couldn't do the monthly book. I couldn't end up doing the monthly book because I'd already accepted the Flash Annual, and I still had to finish college.
So that's interesting. So you ended up like completing college, even though you were getting all of this work. And what did you end up majoring in college? I'm just curious.
I majored in art.
Oh, love it. Yeah,
I mean, Loyola was not the best for comics or anything like that. But one of the reasons I went to Loyola is because you could be an art major and still take the full academic program. Like if I'd gone to an art school, I wouldn't get the academics. And if I had gone to, I was accepted to University of Michigan, but I would have been on their art campus. And I wanted the full academic thing. And I figured, I'll go to American Academy or something like that, or Art Institute afterwards, after college, if I need more art classes or something. But I was already working for DC and Marvel by the time I graduated,
That
so
is
I
awesome.
didn't end up having to do that.
So just to jump back a little bit to Simone and Ajax, Candace was telling me just right before the show that we're pretty sure that you've reached your goal, right? And so there's now stretch goals to be made.
Right. So yeah.
Which is, congratulations.
Yeah,
thank you.
it's so exciting.
Reached the goal in what was it, 4 or 5 days.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I was very lucky. And now, yes, we have now met the first stretch goal, because the book was originally just going to be a soft cover. But now with the first stretch goal, it becomes a hardcover. And the first few stretch goals are all book improvements. I want to give people a really nice book that they're going to look at and they're going to think, oh, this is not just some cheaply made thing. This is something that looks good and feels good, and you have a quality book here. Not just in the material, but just even in how it's made. I want to be proud of this, and like say, this one is the book I'm the most proud of that I've ever done. I mean, not just because of the work, but also just because, it's a well-made book, and working with a Chicago-based printer broker. So, keeping all that Chicago stuff going on. Yeah. So the first stretch goal was at 14,000, and we passed that yesterday. So now it's a hardcover, and now we move on to the stretch goal of spot varnish for the cover, to really make it pop. And then at 20,000, we're going to have custom end papers, because this is just a nice touch.
Yeah, we need that.
So I had like these end papers in the previous book.
I love that.
So now then this new book, this is my little dummy copy. This new book, what's black and white and red all over, will hopefully have that same quality. I mean, I'm going, like I said, I'm going for special printing to make that dual shade technique really work. Unfortunately, digital printing technology hates Zipatone, and Zipatone is with the little dots. Like unless they're generated digitally, I mean, that works fine. But when you scan Zipatone or dual shade, which is similar to Zipatone, if you scan them, it doesn't really like it. So like I said, I'm doing a lot of cleanup to make it work, and I'm going for a special kind of printing to make it work, so that it still looks just as good and sharp as it would have when something was photoshopped back in the 90s or earlier. This dual shade technique goes back to the 30s actually, and that's you mentioned the vintage newspaper strips, and if you see behind me, like this shelf is like Barney Google, Floyd Gottfredson's Mickey Mouse, Terry and the Pirates, the complete wash tubs, and Captain Easy, and that Captain Easy stuff is by an artist named Roy Crane, who was the undisputed master of craft tint. How he pulled off some of these tricks using this mechanical technique, I don't know, but he was amazing at it. He was one of my sort of big three influences, and so that's one reason why I chose, when I started to do Simone and Ajax stories, why I chose to do dual shade the dual shade craft tint technique. So I want to make this book, this new one, something that I'll be just as proud of as any of the other books, because eventually, hopefully maybe the end of next year, I hope to do a Kickstarter to reissue the IDW collection that had come out in 2010 that's long out of print, but was only a paperback at that time. So now let's get it a hardcover, so you can have your nice 3-volume hardcover of everything that's been done with Simone and Ajax. So far.
Definitely, we as comic readers, we love everything to match. And of course, we it's really cool that that's something that is part of the stretch goal, especially because I know a lot of us, comic readers, we love to have the physical copies. We can, at least for me, as also being into marketing and things like that. I'm a paper nerd, so that always matters to me and things like that. And it's cool that it kind of also just makes especially even the older ones that you've worked on, it keeps it even fresher, which is really cool.
I want it to look, I love all these beautiful books on my shelves behind me. I want my books to look just as good alongside those as those things do. So that's why the first 3 stretch goals are all book improvements. and to make it as good as I can. I mean, I can hope that we go beyond 20,000, and I have to come up with some other stretch goals, that like something extra to go even beyond. But like I said, at first, I want the first 3 to be, to make it an even better book.
I love that. And so what was the decision behind making it a Kickstarter? So obviously you've done a Kickstarter before. Why a Kickstarter versus another publisher? Obviously you're very well versed and familiar with all of the comic publishers. So why this route?
Well, because in some ways, one, because I never quite got the sort of the deal that I wanted, on it. To be able to make it the way I wanted to make it. And so I wanted to, maybe it's just me being stubborn, but I wanted to make it the way I wanted to make it and make sure, that it really was as I envisioned it. So, there were, so I just decided, I'm going to just do it this way. I mean, and one other reason was the pandemic. So, I mean, like, okay, so I'm, not going into gory details. I'll just say I was pretty sick there, like 2017 to 19. And one of my things I promised myself is that, if I got better, that I would finish this book, which I actually had started, earlier. And so I was hoping to shop that around a little bit in 2020. Well, we all know what happened in 2020.
Change of plans.
So I just decided I'm going to just, excuse me, I'm just going to do it myself, and make this book the way I want to make it, and with the hardcover and all that sort of stuff, and just really get it out there, and hopefully, and now, yes, I am hoping that there will be I don't want to like jinx it by saying it's happening because it isn't set in stone yet, but yes, there is a good chance there'll be a nice paperback version of this eventually, from a different publisher, but I wanted it, first this way, with us all that stuff,
all the pretty end papers and the hard
I wanted the book my way,
and that's totally understandable, especially since it is of your own creation, and then as we were talking about earlier, just how it's it's bringing a lot of different pieces of of yourself and your career, and of the journey of Simone and Ajax, and it's kind of collecting it all one thing. So I can totally understand wanting it to have that control of what you want it to be.
Right.
I did have some other questions related to this Kickstarter. One being, so besides the stretch goals, there's also a lot of different, I guess, what do they call, pledge rewards that you can get by levels, depending on what you pledge. So can you maybe explain like what some of those are, or some that some people should look out for?
So, I mean, there's just the more standard basic levels where you can just get the book. Now you can get the book just as it is. You can get the book signed. You can get the book signed with a doodle in it, where I'm going to draw you a little picture of Simone, Ajax, or a lemming, because there's lots of lemmings in this.
Oh yeah, I saw that. They're cute.
And so you can get the book like that, or you can add on art rewards. So, like, say for example, I did a mini series called Dinosaurs with Michael Uslan a few years ago. Yeah. It's based on a late 80s cartoon that Michael had created just before he hit it big with the first Batman movie. Michael is the executive producer on all of the DCU movies, going from the very first Tim Burton Batman movie all the way to the present.
Wow.
But Michael had wanted to bring them back, and it's like, so anyway, so you can pledge for the book and get a Dinosaurs page, or you can pledge for the book and get, you could have gotten a Katie Keene pinup, but somebody already grabbed that one. So and that was the last Katie Keene original that I had.
It's okay. Sale. I already have one, so
I know. I saw it. And I'm very happy to
for yourself,
Haley.
That's so cool.
But yeah, I almost never self-publish Simone and Ajax art. And so there were a few pieces of that you could get. And there's still, as far as I know, last I checked, there's still one piece of that left, so you can get original Simone and Ajax art. Although one thing that has proved popular that I actually got from Jimmy Palmiotti, because I was very lucky to have some Kickstarter masterminds give me really good advice. So like Brian Polito and Jimmy Palmiotti and a few other people who'd done Kickstarters, were very kind to me and took time to talk with me about how to do this. And one thing that Jimmy had suggested were mystery boxes. So people can pledge for a mystery box. So not only do you get the book signed and doodled, but you still, yes, you do get a piece of art by me. Now it might just be a loose scribble, something that on some piece of paper. It might be a cover rough. And one person out of everyone who pledges for the mystery box is going to get a $200 original that they can, some kind of pinup that I would normally have priced at $200. And the mystery box is $80 plus $20 shipping, so you're paying $100. So you're actually, that one person's going to get a really good deal. But I'm hoping everybody gets a good deal, because you're also going to get comics by me, comics by other people, fun other things that I just have around here. You're going to get a taste of what kind of weird comics and books does Andrew like? So it might be a 1930s pulp magazine. I actually stuck some of those in some of the mystery boxes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so there's also all sorts of stuff. Archie digests. There were every mystery box had at least one Archie digest.
Yeah, I definitely love those. I have quite a collection of those, because those were actually the first comics that I have ever read, and that was the format. My mom was the one that actually introduced those to me, and now here we are.
Yep. Look, that was that little thing that sucked you in. But
exactly. That's cool. That's part of the mystery box, is just that it's like, okay, it's just a good way to introduce, everyone that's receiving those to like different work that you've done. So they go, oh, I like Simone and Ajax. What else did he work on? And that's really cool.
Yeah. So everyone's going to get, a G.I. Joe or a Fables or something in there, something else that I've worked on. But yeah, it sort of occurs to me, I haven't really talked much about sort of what are Simone and Ajax in the first place.
Yeah, please
yes.
Yeah. So for those who are still listening, so Simone and Ajax, I always tell people, if you're looking for anything deep and meaningful, it's not there. This is fun comics. This is silly comics. There's enough people who are out there already. There's enough other people already telling the darker, more serious stories. I just want to make some fun. So what this is it's sort of a weird buddy comedy. You got a 20-something woman and her best pal, who just happens to be a 3-foot tall cartoony dinosaur. And if you want to find out how they met, that's in the new Kickstarter. What's black and white and red all over, because how did these two get together? But they can go to any time or place I feel like sending them. Lots of cheesy jokes, groaningly bad puns. You're going to hate yourself for liking, and lots and lots of lemmings. So, like, say for example, in last year's book, I can put them in any time or place, like I said. And so in last year's book, there's a pirate adventure.
I read that.
There is a cowboy. There's a Western cowboy story. They go to Transylvania and meet werewolves and vampires and monsters and stuff. There's a private eye story, and like say in the new collection here, there is, you find out what did happen to Atlantis. What happens when Simone decides to go to Valkyrie school. And okay, those are the silly stories are the only kind I know how to tell. Yes, Lauren.
Yeah, but honestly, like that's always my comfort reads, is just being able to read these very like light kind of stories, for sure. I was reading through a lot of those stories, and it was really fun seeing like the pirates, the Valkyries, space, like a whole range of things. And it's kind of just cool that this not very common duo would get together and like go on these crazy adventures. It's really fun.
Yeah, and there's something for everyone in this, like with 100%. All of their travels, and who doesn't want a lighthearted kind of read? I mean, there's so much going on in the world always. Like, it feels so good to just like sit down with something that's just gonna make you feel happy.
Right, and it's not like you have. And one thing I'll say is they're all standalone stories. I try to establish each story on its own, so you don't. Like if you didn't read last year's book, you can still, you can read volume 1 without having to read volume 3. You can read volume 3 without having to read volume 1 or volume 2 or whatever. They you can read the stories out of order. They're hopefully all standalone, and I establish hopefully within the first few pages who these characters are and what they're doing. And you just sort of have to in some ways you just sort of have to go with it, but hopefully I've given you enough to actually like do that. So I just want anyone to know that if you haven't read them before, you can just dive in the middle. It all still works. And if you do, and I'll also mention that, if you do buy the, back the new book on Kickstarter, you can also get as an add-on, you can get the previous book that I was showing you that came out last year. And I should also probably say, how do you find this Kickstarter? because
So we dropped the link in the chat, but it'll also be in the description once we post the show after this live, and we'll also link to your social medias. But if you want to tell people as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's several ways. If you're watching this live and you're like, I want to back this like right this second.
You do. You totally do.
You really do.
Yeah.
You really do.
So you can just go to, several ways. You can go to Kickstarter and just search Pepoy, Pepoy, and all three projects I've ever been involved with in Kickstarter will pop up. And the current one is What's Black and White and Red All Over. So click on that one, and that'll tell you, that'll easily, give you all the info you need, tell you what all the rewards are, all that. But you can also just go to pepoy.com, Pepoy.com, or Simone and Ajax. So Simone with an E, Simone, and spelled out Ajax.com. And the first thing you'll see on both those pages is the first thing you'll see on those pages is like the landing screen will tell you back the Kickstarter, and there's also a pop-up box. Now, for anyone watching this, after July 13th, when the campaign ends, if you're like watching this on July 14th and you're like, oh, darn, I missed it. You can still go to either pepoy.com or simoneajax.com and click the Buy Books button up in the top right. And that'll tell you where to get it at this point. So like after it ends on Kickstarter, I'm going to move it over to Indiegogo In Demand, which I've been sort of using as a shop for the previous book. And I'm going to set up a new page that will be a shop for both books at that point. So if you're watching this, at the end of July and you're not out of luck, you can still go on there at any time and still order the books. And I will be the one, and I will be the one, handling a lot of this and signing and doodling. And yes, I'm going to have a fulfillment service for some of it, but certainly a lot of these, like the mystery boxes or the art rewards, I'm hand packing myself and going to make sure you get your book and your fun stuff all in good shape, and so you can hopefully just enjoy it and have a good time.
And those are only part of the Kickstarter. So, don't wait until after July if you're seeing this before then, before July 13th.
Yeah.
Right. Now, some rewards will transfer over to the Indiegogo, but not all of them. And with the art rewards, yes, you can still get a Dinosaurs page, but as far as any of the individual things like a Simone and Ajax cover or pinup or the Katie Keene art or some of the other art I put up, except for one Simone and Ajax pinup with them as private eye detectives, everything else has already been claimed. So hop in there and hopefully you can get one of those, if you want that rare piece of original Simone and Ajax art. That's just the only one left at this point. And you can get a commission. There's the commission level reward. So I'm very fortunate that I'm very busy with work, and so at least at the moment, and so I am not doing commissions outside of being at conventions or through my Kickstarters. So if you've been wanting a commission from me and you're not in Chicago and you can't come to C2E2 or Fan Expo or anything like that, where I'm actually going to be at doing commissions, you can get one through the campaign. So you'll get a book and you get to pick out, a character of your choice and say, hey, draw this, draw Black Canary or draw, Squidman or whoever. And I will do that for you. And if you pick Simone, you get a second character free as long as it's Ajax.
I love that. Those are just such special rewards that people can get. I mean, to own original art is just, I can say it's such a privilege from you. I love it so much. My Katie Keene piece.
I'm honored that your entire art collection is my work.
It is.
Yeah, I don't know about that life yet. But it's on my list for sure.
But thank you so much for sharing about Simone and Ajax. We really appreciate it. If you are watching this, go back the Kickstarter. It is just something you're definitely going to want to read and have in your collection.
Absolutely.
And thank you for having me on and helping get the word out there. And for, like I said, I think I told you off camera, before, it's like, it just, I had to reach out to you guys because there you were loving, the stuff I was doing. And it was like, oh, I've got to contact these two.
Yeah. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Thanks to the chat for, tuning in and watching this interview. And if you're catching the replay, let us know what you think in the comments.
Hi to everybody, and thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.